Hello and welcome to Hermit's Guide to the Apocalypse. Today I'm gonna be showing you the best looting locations in each starting city to get all the books that you might need, as well as a few of the other methods you can use to get into these places. Well, let's just get right into it. There's a few places in every city of going about getting every book. Their most solid choice of course being the bookstores and libraries, but if these places are too risky to loot them, there are other places you might be able to hit to find them. Generally you can find garages that are filled with books of a certain series, and of course you can look through the residential districts to find the books themselves through just bookcases. Though I generally hit these places after I've hit the bookstores and stuff. You can also check the self-storage buildings, but they generally share the same loot pools as the garages. I don't try to rely on these buildings, more something to come across if I'm already looting around there. To get us started, what I find the easiest location to loot in Rosewood is the elementary school in the south. It has a decent sized library and it's not that hard to sneak into without causing too much fuss, as long as you don't get followed in from afar, that is. If you approach the building from the north, you might be able to smash the window for the library and lure them away like that. For the other major location in Rosewood, you have the bookstore in the main street. Now, main streets are generally harder to loot, but the one in Rosewood is remarkably easy to lure the zombies away from. First, catch the side of the building's groups by pressing Q. Then, make your way to the other side of the street where the diner is at. Wait for the zombies to catch up with you, and if you have to, run back and circle them once to get them in a tighter cluster. Very important to note, when luring zombies, you do not have to run. Your walking speed, when not tired or over-encumbered, is faster than the default zombie speed, so you can safely walk away without costing any stamina. Once all the zombies are on the other side of the building, or near enough, start running around the other side, and once you hit the corner, start sneak running back towards the bookstore. If done right, the large majority of the group should still be behind the diner, leaving you with a few stragglers to take care of. If there's still too many however, you can make another circle, this time behind the buildings and through the alleyway. You should have more than enough time to grab all the books that you need. If you need a rest from all that running, you can check if the door to the upstairs residential is open. If so, you'll have access to quite a few decent apartments. For residential districts in Rosewood, you have an area right behind the fence of the main street. It has quite a few garages and plenty residential homes with bookcases. There's also an area south of Rosewood which does have a library, but you need both a car to get there and it's quite infested, so I can't really recommend newcomers go there at all. Riverside is also a pretty good place to get started for Carpet 3, if you don't mind being stuffed in a corner of a map like I do. That aside, it's a very open type place with plenty of too tall fences which you can run around to lose the zombies on. With it being so open though, the zombies are quite more spread out here, making the city a lot easier than other cities in my opinion. Reason being that the zombies aren't stacked up as much. If you selected Riverside and you spawn in something that looks like a trailer, congratulations, you are up north in the worst possible area to spawn in the entire game. While you're here though, you might as well check out the self-storage lots and the factory to get yourself equipped, and maybe even find your books. Check the parking lots in front of these buildings as well as the gas station across the road to see if you might be able to get a car. If you can't find a car to get out of here however, you're stuck running all the way back to Riverside. Getting to Riverside proper though, there's of course a bookstore that you can hit in the main street. Using the same luring tactics as before, yelling for the zombies in the street to come my way, taking them around a tree line and a building, then going back around to the hotel myself, and even finding time to rest up inside one of the rooms, I'm able to make my way back to the bookstore with relative ease, making sure to take care of any of the stragglers trying to get into the building of course. If you don't think you have enough time, you can use the bookcases themselves to hide behind. Just make sure to hit the 3 bookcases in front first. You should know when to hold them and know when to fold them, because if they start pouring in, you need to get your ass out of there. If you're just looking at the online map for bookcases, be careful, as some of them, like this one here in Riverside, will trick you. The school in Riverside is another place to get your books. The library isn't quite as big as others, but the school itself is surrounded by a 2-high wire fence and quite large open fields, making it possible to even fight your way in, as long as you play it careful. The library in this school is right in the middle, so it doesn't have an easy luring tactic. If you need to get rid of zombies at the southern door though, you can bait them around the residential neighborhood right below you. Just circle the first house or two, depending. The houses in Riverside are all quite large and expensive looking. Given the general higher income of the people that lived here, they have more stuff in their houses, including more bookcases and more garages to loot. One more thing worth mentioning is that Riverside, along with one other starting city, have a VHS store, in which you're able to find a ton of skill tapes, which you can definitely use in conjunction with the books to power level your skills to an even higher degree. You can only watch each VHS once for skills, so make sure you've read the corresponding book before you give it a watch. Muldraugh is probably the shortest one on this list when it comes to book locations. It is probably the weakest place to start for books, as there's only one bookstore and no libraries. I barely even have any notes on it. The one place in town you can hit for books is the mini mall. You need to hit up the western location, next to the police station. Fortunately, the one place in town to look for books has a very easy and known bait-around tactic to easily clear at least a part of the mini mall temporarily. Collect your group by running around them and yelling. Try to make them into a big ball by going around in circles around them, and then walk into the woods. Keep walking and dodging the trees and yell once more once you're on the other side. Then you can sneak your way over to the left and around the tree line, leaving you with a mostly clear part of the mini mall, giving you a very easy bookstore looting session. If they do start coming back, however, you can always escape out the back. Aside from the mini mall and driving up to Dixie, in Muldraugh you're quite stuck collecting books from residential districts. You are, however, quite centered in the map, and have a good capacity to drive anywhere you want, including any of the other mentioned cities. If you manage to get yourself a car, that is. Speaking of, Dixie is the town north of Muldraugh you can't ordinarily spawn at, which does have a few solid places of getting books, being another bookstore and the EP tools, as well as the farmer's market even. Unfortunately, this area is quite busy and you do need a car to get here, so if you're a newer player, maybe hold off on this one for a while. Muldraugh does have very large quantities of hardware supplies, with tons of larger warehouses and the like to get the supplies, just not the skill level itself. It does have the other VHS store in a starting location right on the main highway, so at least there's that to somewhat cover for the lack of bookstores. Or maybe just drive by from Rosewood. Last but not least, we have West Point, the area I have by far the most notes on in regards to looting. West Point is a rougher place to start for even more experienced players. Most of the city is always congested, with a large main street and the residential districts being of decent wells, but still quite close together. The only constant rest you will find here is up north in town, where the houses get further and further apart, as well as the users being further away from the main street. For looting places, first off I have the post office, right next to the hardware store. You might think it isn't a very good place to recommend, as it's right next to the main street. However, I find it a far better alternative to looting the bookstore across the street, as here you have a fairly decent chance of sneaking in without causing too much of a fuss. There's a solid chance you'll have to fight a little, but that's just how West Point is. Then of course you have the aforementioned bookstore right across the street in the main street. However, baiting tactics don't really work as well in West Point. While you may have plenty of room and corners to move zombies around on, the pure amount of them in the area will make it so that every time you shake the group behind you, you'll have a brand new group on you already, possibly exhausting you before you can even get to the intended area. The only real way I've found is to get around the back and to go through the cafe. However, the back door needs to be unlocked for this, and it's far from a permanent solution, only meant to buy you a little time so you can loot the bookstore as fast as you can. While recording, this is the only place that I managed to find all the Carpenter books in, which was my main target. However, considering that's all just RNG related, I won't read too much into it, and neither should you. slightly easier solution in West Point is once again the high school. It's still busy, but you have a solid chance of shaking at least the library side by smashing a window and baiting the zombies around the fence, the food market, or the food market itself. As always, make sure to deal with stragglers. If you need to rest up, go upstairs into the teacher's lounge and go take a nap. Finally, you have the residentials, with tons of garages and high-value homes to find the last few books that you might need if the other areas didn't have everything that you needed. While West Point is an area where you can definitely find a lot, you can also find a lot of congestion and zombies. That makes it hard to recommend to newer players, as little mistakes here just add up too quickly. As surprised to myself as the Muldraugh fanboy that I am, I found Rosewood to be the easiest to find all the books in that I wanted. The good areas are easy to get to and clear out without risking yourself. As well as having plenty of good base locations makes Rosewood the easiest starting location for me. In second place total, we have Riverside for ease, as its open areas allow for you to get into fights without notifying half the block. Finally, when it comes to book locations, West Point does have Muldraugh beat, but I would still recommend going to Muldraugh instead of West Point if it's between the two, as West Point goes hard. As much as it pains me to say it, Muldraugh and West Point are generally better used for newer players as an area to loot later on. Now that you've possibly collected all 50 books and all of the magazines, it's time to get yourself a cup of tea or coffee, sit down, read your books,